Dear learners, I welcome you all to Unit 12 of the fourth module belonging to the MOOC course on gender and the media. In this particular unit, we shall discuss about gender equality in media content and in the media sector, along with media and communication for gender and development. Besides, we shall also discuss about gender and media equality across the globe. Now, way back in 1995, the governments participating in the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, they reached a consensus on specific strategic objectives and related actions to advance equality, development, and peace for all women. One objective, to promote a balanced and non-stereotype portrayal of women in the media. It listed several actions, inter alia, promoting research and implementing an information, education, and communication strategy, encouraging the media to refrain from exploitation, sexualization, and commodification of women, and promoting the idea that sexist stereotypes in media are gender discriminatory, degrading, and offensive. Then in 2003, the Commission on the Status of Women. This particular commission recognized the potential of the media and of information and communications technologies to contribute to the advancement and empowerment of women. And when we talk about gender equality in a media scenario, that is a very critical component of broader efforts to achieve social equity. It involves fair representation, equal opportunities, and balanced participation of all genders in both the content produced and the operations of the media sector. Now, when women are featured in media, they are very often portrayed in limited way, in stereotypical roles, such as a caregiver, maybe in the form of a model, maybe a victim. So these are some of the very common kind of stereotypical roles that women are being portrayed. And women are more likely to be linked to superficial characteristics, such as the appearance, the way they wear the clothes, their age, and the relationship status. While the men tend to be referred to in relation to the ideas, in relation to the experiences, and in relation to their professions. Now, gender inequality is clearly visible within the media industry. And even though an increasing number of women, they're studying and entering the journalism profession, they still continue to face significant barriers to safety, support, and career progression. And as a result of which, they remain underrepresented in the sector. Women's journalism is often linked to soft topics like that of health issues, social issues, and so forth. On the other hand, men are more likely to report on hard topics that are said to be very important, such as sexism and sexual harassment. So that becomes very much difficult and at times very much unsafe also for women to go about the daily work. And women, they face greater pressure than men to look and dress a certain way, even especially while working in television. Thus, it becomes very much important to create an enabling environment that allows all the employees, regardless of gender, to carry out their work in a professional and safe manner. And governments also, they need to acknowledge the important place of media and communication within the broader objective of promoting gender equality and women empowerment. Professional media in particular have a very fundamental obligation, following industry ethics, to present balanced, fair and accurate content. And media organizations, they need to be accountable to the societies in which they operate and the audiences they serve. Gender equality is embraced as a global goal, and media have a significant role in promoting or in sabotaging its achievement. Weak and inconsistent implementation of gender politics, it needs to be addressed. Thereby, institutionalization of a gender-sensitive journalistic culture, it remains very important. Now, so you can see how media can actually play a very prominent, a very influential role in how people form their identities, the social norms and values in relation to gender. Media can perpetuate stereotypes but also challenge them. And different research studies have been done which actually shows that from a very young age, children are very much influenced by the gendered stereotypes that media present to them. So, therefore, there is an enormous potential for media to reflect a wider variety of roles and behaviors of men and women, encouraging the people to aspire to be different, more gender equal futures. And media can do this by presenting the news in a gender sensitive way. Now, if you try to understand some of the key points of this particular discussion, first issue we have that of representation. Women make up about 35% of the journalism workforce worldwide, but only 27% of top management positions are occupied by women. And as far as the coverage of different topics are concerned, usually the women journalists, they cover the soft topics like health and social issues, while the men are likely to report on very hard topics like politics and the economy. Then another issue which is very much common as far as the representation of women or representation the gender is concerned is stereotypes. Media content often perpetuates gender stereotypes, with about 46% of news stories reinforcing these stereotypes. Women are frequently portrayed in stereotypical and hyper-sexualized roles, especially in the field of advertising and the film industry. As far as the area of leadership or decision making is concerned, only 27% of management jobs in the media sector are occupied by women. This underrepresentation in leadership roles, it limits the influence of women in shaping media content and policies. So thereby, we can say that media definitely has the potential to play a transformative role in achieving gender equality by creating gender sensitive and gender transformative content. And this includes challenging the traditional social and cultural norms and showing women in leadership roles and as experts on a variety of topics. Now, keeping this certain key points in our mind, we can try to introspect into how we can improve this particular situation. What strategies can be implemented for improvement? First is promoting gender equality in the workplace. Employers can implement policies and practices that actually support the safety, the skills and leadership of women journalists. Then, secondly, creating gender transformative content. Media organizations should produce content that challenges the gender stereotypes and promote gender equality. Then there should be monitoring and evaluation as well. Establishing mechanisms to assess progress and ensure accountability in promoting gender equality within the media sector. Now, when we talk about gender equality in media content, like it can be print media, it can be electronic media, it can be online media, in those different contents that have been broadcast, that have been printed, what kind of issues, what kind of topics are being concerned, or how men and women are being represented in the different media forms. Now, there are certain very common challenges that we see as far as gender equality in media content is concerned. Some of these challenges are very common. I'm sure most of you all also are well aware of it. The first one, we have the stereotypes and bias. Media often perpetuates traditional gender roles and stereotypes, such as portraying women primarily in domestic roles or objectifying them in advertising. Then we have underrepresentation. Women, non-binary, and gender diverse individuals, they are often underrepresented in media content. Mostly, as far as leadership or the authoritative roles are concerned. Then narrative inequality. The different stories about women or the stories by women are frequently sidelined, and their perspectives are less prioritized in mainstream media. Then there are also very much gender gaps are seen in the field of leadership as well. Women and marginalized genders, they remain underrepresented in leadership and decision-making roles within the media organizations. Then there are disparities in payment as well. Wage gaps are there, with women and other underrepresented groups earning less than their male counterparts. There is also workplace discrimination, like gender-based harassment, lack of support structures. They often hinder career progression. Now, how do we look after such kind of inequality that has been existing? How we try to counter them and come out with a long-term blueprint in making everything, there should be equal opportunity should be given to men and women. Certain recommendations we can look into, like diverse representation. Now, this would ensure equitable representation of genders in all genres, from news coverage to entertainment. Then we have empowering the storylines. One can promote narratives that challenge stereotypes and highlight the achievements of marginalized genders. Then there is leadership opportunities. Mentorship can be developed and sponsorship programs to promote women and gender diverse individuals into leadership roles. Then transparent policies. Policies can be implemented on equal pay, on anti-harassment and inclusive recruitment practices. Of course, there are certain very famous, very well-known international frameworks are there. International initiatives are there, which are being implemented, which are being looked into. The first, we have the gender sensitive indicators for media, that is known as GSIM. Now, gender sensitive indicators for media, it provides tools for assessing gender equality in media content and institutions. And the main aim of GSIM is to contribute to gender equality and women empowerment, and through media of all forms, irrespective of the technology that is being used. The second very important international framework that is in focus is the Beijing Platform for Action that happened in 1995. This particular framework, it calls for increased, participation of women in media and a balanced portrayal of women and men. The Beijing Platform for Action is a framework of commitments to achieve gender equality and women's rights. This was adopted in 1995 at the United Nations 4th World Conference on Women in Beijing, China. Now, what does this particular framework do? It defines women's rights as human rights. It identifies areas where urgent action is needed to achieve equality for women and men. It provides a blueprint for countries to take action. And finally, it promotes gender mainstreaming so that gender is considered in all policies and programs. The third important international framework is the Global Media Monitoring Project, GMMP. This project, it tracks the gender disparities in media representation globally. Now, what about the role of media consumers? We all are media consumers, okay? Because we consume the news content, we consume the different news stories as being propagated by different media forms. So we are consumers of media. And how can we as consumers advocate for gender equality? We can support media outlets that champion gender inclusivity. We can critically analyze the media content for biasness and thereby challenge the discriminatory representations. We as media consumers, we can amplify the voices and creators that focus on gender equity. When we talk about media and communication for gender and development, what do we exactly mean by it? This means how media and different communication channels, different communication strategies can actually help in accelerating gender and development. Now we're going to discuss how media and communication can actually speed up the gender and development process. Definitely, media and communication plays a very prominent role in advancing gender and development by raising awareness, by challenging the stereotypes, and by driving social change. And when they're used effectively, they can empower marginalized groups, promote gender equity, and contribute to sustainable development. Now, there are certain points that we can highlight here as far as trying to understand the role of media in gender and development. The first important point is raising awareness. Media serves as a powerful tool to educate the public about gender inequalities and their impact on society. Second is amplifying voices. Media platforms can elevate the voices of women and marginalized genders, thereby showcasing their experiences, struggles, and achievements. Third important point that we can talk about is advocating for policy change. Through the medium of investigative journalism and public discourse, media can influence policymakers to address gender disparities. Then challenging the stereotypes. By portraying diverse and non-traditional gender roles, media can challenge cultural norms and stereotypes. Then there are the communication strategies for gender in media. This was all about how media can actually help in gender and development. But now we are going to discuss about the communication strategies that can be used to accelerate or to propagate gender and development. Now, effective communication for gender and development involves deliberate, inclusive, and participatory approaches. The first important point that we can talk about is gender-sensitive messaging. Make use of inclusive language that actually avoids stereotypes. One can highlight the stories of empowerment and gender equality. One can also focus on intersectionality, addressing how factors like race, class, and disability interests intersect with gender. Then we have participatory communication. Now, these are all the different communication strategies. Okay. Participatory communication is one of the communication strategies. So, what one can do under participatory communication? One can involve communities, particularly women and marginalized groups, in content creation and decision-making processes. One can also use formats like community radio, storytelling, and social media to foster two-way communication. Third important communication strategies that we are talking about is campaigns and advocacy. Now, under campaigns and advocacy, one can organize media campaigns, when one needs to kind of address different issues such as gender-based violence, education for girls, and workplace equality. Then there is, one can partner with influencers, with artists and activists to reach wider audience. Fourth most important communication strategies that can be employed is digital and social media. Now, under digital and social media, one can leverage social media platforms to mobilize support for gender initiatives. One can also use hashtags and viral campaigns to amplify the advocacy efforts. Then we have challenges in media for gender development. Definitely there will be, there are both pros and cons when we try to utilize media and other communication platforms and other communication channels, other communication strategies for having for promoting gender development. There can be certain challenges as well. The first important challenge that is very widely seen is bias and stereotyping. Persistent gender stereotypes, it undermines the effectiveness of media as a tool for equality. Then there is access gap. Women and marginalized groups may have limited access to media and communication technologies. And as far as media ownership is concerned, the male-dominated leadership in media organizations, they can limit the focus on gender-sensitive content. Then there is a safety of journalists. Women journalists, they face harassment and threats, limiting their ability to report on gender-related issues. Now, there are certain key focus areas that we can look into in order to promote gender equality. The first is education. Now, when we talk about education, one needs to promote the importance of girls' education through media campaigns. One can also make use of communication tools to address the cultural and societal barriers to education. Another important focus area is economic empowerment. One can highlight the success stories of women entrepreneurs and leaders. One can also advocate for equal pay, for financial literacy and access to resources. Then there is a health and reproductive rights. Media can also be used to educate about family planning, about maternal health and gender-based violence. Now, when we talk about gender-based violence, how can we counteract it? We can go for media campaigns to raise awareness about it. One can also highlight the support systems and other legal frameworks that are available to the survivors. There are some examples of very successful initiatives that have been carried out in this particular regard. We have the He for She campaign that's been run by United Nations Women's. Now, He for She campaign engages men and boys in promoting gender equality. Then there is a BBC Media Action Projects, which uses media to address gender issues in developing countries. The third important is, which we've already discussed, that is a global media monitoring project. It tracks the representation of women in news media worldwide. Now, so far we have tried to understand what is gender equality, how gender equality is prevalent in the field of media scenario, what are the key issues we need to look into, what are the challenges that are usually seen, how we can address those challenges. Now, if we look at the overall situation of gender and media equality across the globe, what do we see? Gender equality in the media is an essential pillar, we know that, for achieving broader gender equity in society. Media influences perceptions, sets societal norms, and can either reinforce or challenge gender biases. Despite progress in some regions, significant disparities persist in the representation of genders and in the opportunities available within media industries worldwide. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which we are very much well aware of, those goals seek to realize the human rights of all and achieve gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. The role of media in advancing gender equality that has been mentioned specifically in the post-2015 development blueprint under Goal 5 on enhancing the use of information communication technology to promote the empowerment of women. And at the same time, it is clear that media are implicated in the achievement of gender equality aspirations in all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, in as far as the role in maintaining social and cultural norms, underpinning discrimination and inequality across all thematic areas is concerned. The Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. This particular convention, it recognizes the role of stereotypes in giving rise to the multitude of legal, political and economic constraints on the advancement of women. Although gender equality is progressing in most societies in the world, many different forms of inequalities is still there. It persists. Even in countries where gender equality laws have been put in place, substantial differences in life conditions for women and men it remains. Gender gaps are still there in different degrees in health, you name it, in the field of education, as far as economic participation is concerned, as far as opportunities are concerned, in the field of material resources and political empowerment. No country in the world up till now has yet fully closed the gender gap. Of course, certain efforts are being made, certain efforts are being undertaken to close the gap, but still, to certain degree, to certain extent, the gap still exists. Even the World Economic Forum projects that it will take another, maybe 50 to 60 years to achieve full gender parity in the world. Because there are a lot of issues to look into. If you look as far as the representation in the media content is concerned, there is underrepresentation, right? Women and gender diverse individuals, they're consistently underrepresented in news coverage, in film, in other forms of media. Even in workplace, there is inequality in media. There's leadership gaps is there, pay disparity is there. There's issue of safety and harassment as well. And even in certain parts of the globe, like if you consider Africa, there is of course increasing participation of women in media leadership roles, with initiatives like the Gender Links program that promotes gender sensitive reporting. Even then, the cultural norms and lack of resources limits gender equitable representation in rural and traditional media platforms. In Asia, take for example, there are emerging platforms for women-driven media, such as online publication and other community-based journalism. But there is persistent stereotypes in film and advertising and significant underrepresentation in leadership roles in media organization. In Europe also, there are strong policies promoting gender equality in public broadcasters, especially in Nordic countries. Even then, gender bias remains prevalent in commercial media, particularly in advertising and entertainment. And then in other Middle Eastern and North African regions as well, there are still challenges remaining in the United States as well. There is advocacy for gender equality, but the women of color, or for that matter the LGBTQ plus individuals, remain underrepresented. Achieving gender equality in media is a collaborative effort. It requires systematic change in how stories are told, who tells those stories, and the power structures within media organizations. And by amplifying the diverse voices, addressing stereotypes, and ensuring equitable opportunities, media can actually play a transformative role in advancing global gender equality. So with this, we have come towards the end of this unit, which also ends the 4th module of the MOOC course on gender and the media. Thank you.